start another tutorial about the Korg Pa5X. In this tutorial we are going to take a look at the included synthesizer that you have on the Korg Pa5X. And in that synthesizer you can create your own sounds. It's a really powerful add-on to a keyboard, so it's good to know that it's there and how you can use it to your own advantage. And in this tutorial I will show you the basics of how to program your own sounds. But first let me give a few examples of what you can achieve in the included synthesizer when you program your own sounds. To go to the included synthesizer you press the Rec Edit button and then you see a section over here in the left bottom of your screen and it's called Sound Edit. Click that one and now we are in the included synthesizer. And we have the German dry sound. And that's basically all the sounds that you have in your Pa5X. You have the factory sounds, which you can use, legacy sounds, GM sounds, and there is also a user area. So if you like a specific sound and you want to modify it, then you can just select it over here and you can modify that sound to your liking. Then you have a start to modify sounds. But that's not what we're gonna do. We are going to create our own sounds for the user section. And let me first give a few examples of user sounds that you can create yourself. This is the distant echo sound. Things like wave sequencing, or cello like in Game of Thrones. Your own type of pianos. Jean Michel Jarre kind of strings. Typical ensemble strings. Choirs. Trance type of sounds. Guitars, also really nice. Or 12-string guitars. It's also a nice sound. Things like filter gates, where you use the filter. Or you can add your own samples to it and then you get those big massive sounds based on your own samples. Things like saturated plugs which you hear in trance music. combinations of all kind of samples. The famous Roland XV bass. So you can easily replace then one of the Korg basses with a Roland bass like this. Sound effects. Well, a lot. All kind of different flavors that you can create yourself. But most of the sounds are created with the factory samples, so we are going to focus on that one. So when you want to start a sound, then the only thing you have to do is select one of the factory presets and then click the menu and select Initialize Sound. It will ask you if you want to initialize this set. Yes. And now we have a dry signal. That means that we only have one oscillator and no effects assigned. So now we have to go to program the sound. So let's create a pad sound to see how that is done. When you press the menu button, you come in the programming area of that synthesizer. And we have a few sections where you can set up your sound. In the basic section you can set up your samples. Which samples are you going to use and how do they behave. In the pitch section you can select how the pitch is working for that sound. The filter section is for the filters, like do you want to remove or emphasize specific frequencies. In the amp section you can determine the behavior of the sound. Should it die instantly or should it behave like a pad sound, slowly raise the sound. That you can do in the amp section. With the LFOs you can add movements like little robots that are turning knobs for you. And in the effects section you can add effects over your sound to modify it. So we have to start with the basics. We are going to determine what kind of sound we are going to make, and we have to load a sample for that. So press the basic button and you see over here a lot of menu options. And the only things that are important now are the oscillators count. When you start programming you can use up till 24 samples in a sound. But most of the time that's not needed, especially not if you're just beginning programming sounds. And then an oscillator count of 2 is more than enough. But for now we leave it on 1 because we are going to program one oscillator and we are going to copy that oscillator to oscillator 2 later on in this tutorial. So leave that one now to on, but in this section you can set how many of these oscillator samples you are going to use. So set it to 1 and go to the oscillator tab. Now we are in the section where we can select a sample, and in the section over here you can select one of the included samples. So what you are going to do is you run through this item till you hear the sound that you want to use as a basic for your sound. There is a list in the user manual for that, and if you press 1000 then we are somewhere in the area where you have the synthesizer sounds and not the acoustic sounds. So and here we are, and here we are. Yeah, we are going to use this standard pad. And let's make a Jean Michel Jarre pad out of it. It's a good starting point of that. You can see over here in the right top of the menu that it's a stereo sample. So you don't have to set the left and right samples for that. But we are going to use this one. And we play it, you hear the sample. But you also hear that it dies immediately. So we have to say to the synthesizer that it has to enter slowly, and you are doing that in the menu button in the amplitude section. So think of it like this, and we have a envelope generator. That's the name of the of Korg. They call it EGs, other synths call it ADSR, but Korg calls all these things EG. Here you see the attack, decay, the sustain and the release. Those are the most important ones. So we want to get it in slowly, so we start at position 0 and we raise this value, the attack value, and now you see that this line is slowly going to move to the right. So this is like you turn the volume level of an amplifier, and basically is what you're seeing here, how that volume behaves. So we have it now at 88, so if we play a chord now, it comes in slowly, and if we set it to the max, it takes even more time to get to that maximum value. So you can use it to your own advantage. And with the decay you can set up the break level, how it turns down. And with the sustain you can set up how much volume drop you will have when you hold the notes. So you hear now it enters slowly. The decay falls down and it stays on 51 for the volume. And if we enter some release and we leave it, you see that it slowly dies. So you can also say from the break level that it has to go smoothly back to that volume drop. So you can do it that way, but let's say that we want to keep everything at the loudest, so don't use the decay for this one. And 0, and set the sustain to maximum, 99. And when I leave it now, then it slowly dies. So we have the basic sound for that Jean Michel Jarre pad. So now it would be cool if we add some filter movement on top of it. So we go to the filter section and we say, hey, we don't want the full frequency range, but we want to limit that one. So we are going to slow it down. And basically what we are doing, we are removing things from the high end, from the high frequencies. So we can paint our sound to our liking. We can also do the opposite by changing the other one. And now basically we are only using this area. And for filter B, we are using this one. So how much of the low end is going through and how much of the high end is going through. But for this tutorial we are only using the low pass resonance, but you can experiment with that. And with the resonance level we can emphasize certain frequencies. So now it would be nice if a robot is turning this dial for us so that we got something like this. And that is done in the LFO mod section. And we can say if we are using an LFO, which is basically that robot that follows a certain pattern, it should give an intensity of, for instance, 32. And the robot is turning really fast this value and adds 32 based on the LFO speed. So if you go to the LFO to program the LFO, you can over here see what kind of movement it makes. You can select one of the others. We can also say, hey, go down and up. Or something like this. You get different kind of sounds. And let me lower the frequency. So now it's doing this in this specific frequency. With the MIDI tempo sync we can even modify the time base and yeah, set it to our to the tempo of our style. We can do that. So if we take a slower one, so now it's using this time base to do that movement. So if you go to the filter again, you hear a drastic effect. But as I said before, when you are designing your own sounds, everything has to be subtle. So we are going to do this only a little bit. So now it has some movement on top of it. So it has now a movement of +2 and it moves a little bit. And now we can set the filter to our liking for this specific sound that we're after. Maybe a little less. So now we have used the amp section, we have the filter section, the LFO section and the basic section. So the only thing we have to do now is add some effects on top of that. Now, in my previous tutorial I said if you want to alter the sound, you are going to use the FX. And if you want to add something on top of the sounds, then you are going to use the Master FX. So basically when you are going to use delays or reverbs, you are always using the Master FX. But for Jean Michel Jarre we are going to add a phaser FX, and that is going to modify the sound, so we have to load it in the Insert FX section. We are going to enable it, and in the modulator section you can find several phasers. We have a stereo envelope phaser, a stereo phaser plus tremolo, orange phaser, classic flanger, small phaser, all kind of things. So let's try a few of them to hear if we got one that has that sound. Well, this is a nice default phaser, and the only thing we have to do now is that we are going to slow it a little bit down. So we set the LFO frequency. How much is the robot turning for that frequency? So let's slow it down. We can set it completely to wet if you want that. Or leave more of the dry signals through. So we want to alter the complete sound, so we set it completely to wet. So we're basically done, and we can add some extra frequencies to the filter. And now we have programmed that Jean Michel Jarre Souvenir of China pad. So you can spend some more time on it to make it even better. But basically that's the default of how to do this. Now what we said in the earlier stage was that we have now only used one sample. We can say that we are going to use 2 samples, so we are going to add something on top of that. And I want this oscillator copied to oscillator 2, because I've said all kind of things in this specific sound, and I want the same characteristics on the second oscillator. So we are going to use in the menu copy oscillator, and we are going copy 1 to oscillator 2. So let's do this. So now we have 2 oscillators active. You can see it also in the bottom area of the screen. And the second one is an exact copy of the first one. So if we are going to use a different sample now, we will add that on top of the other sample. So this is one with a short sound effects. And this is a nice effect to add on top of it, but you hear also that it's way too loud now. So what we are going to do is to lower the level of this specific sample, so that it's more in line, and the phaser strings are the most important part of the sound. So now it is an added effect on top of that, and it would be nice if you now use a reverb on top of that to smooth it together. Let's use an overt for that. Set it to 20, something like 78, well, 80. So now we are using two oscillators where the phaser is the most important part of the sound, and the second one is now adding some effects on top of that. So you can build your own sound with layers the way you like it. Now if you think, hey, I like this sound, I want to save it, press the menu button, save sound, select an area where you want to save it. For instance, it looks the first free slot, I think. But you can use the browse section and you can add a location for it. Well, I'm not going to replace any of this, but let's say that I want to save it over here. And I name this Jean Michel Jarre PAD. And I save it. Now it's in user one at that location. Now we have created that specific sound. So if I select a different sound and we are going to the Jean Michel Jarre PAD, everything is there again. So that's how you create pad sounds in the synthesizer. Another example is, for instance, a bass sound. So let's create a bass sound quickly. We follow the same principle. Select one of the included factory sounds. It's here now. Select initialize sound. We have the dry piano again. Press the menu button. So let's go to the basic section. And we are going to start at 1500 again. And let's find a bass sound. A Moog bass sound, for instance. Okay, we have the bass sound and we want to let it behave like a standard bass sound. And when we hold the note now, you hear that it continues to sound. And for this example we don't want that. So we go to the amplitude section again and we go to the envelope generator, the lowest tab. We want to have control over the bass sound so that it dies quickly according to the length that we have in mind. So we need to use the set decay, but if we are going to use the decay and enter a high value for that, you see that it gets larger. And that is because the break is at 99. So you have to set that to 0, and now you see that the decay level is going down. So if we are playing a bass now, and it will go up, and in the sustain phase you will hear that sample again. So we don't want that too, so we set the sustain phase also to 0. So the sustain phase is when you hold a note, how long, at what level should you hear that? Now we don't want to hear it. And now we have set up a bass sound. It's really that easy, and we can make it shorter or longer. So that's how you do that, and with the filter you can do the same. And we can set it to a minimum value to change the characteristics of that bass sound. As I said before, it's all with painting with sound colors till you hear something you like. Emphasize some of the frequencies. So now we have created this bass sound. So we have to, we don't need the other elements, and we are going to use the effects section for this, and we are going to change the bass sound again. And we are going to give it more punch, and you are going to do that with the amplifier section. And there's a stereo bass cap for inlet of a bass amp model, of an amp plus a cabinet. Yeah, what you like. Let me select the amp model. And now we can tailor how that bass sounds. We want more middle, less presence, a little bit more bass. So now we can even make it even further. And we can even change what kind of amplifier we are going to use. So now we have done that, and we can add compressors on top of that, or delays. Let me set up a delay, a tempo synced stereo BPM out of pen delay. So you can tailor it completely to your liking with the bass notes, and for left and right, so the time bass, you can set that one exactly what you want, or just a little bit effect and set the wet level to, for instance, 23. Then it's much quieter in the effects. So now you have created a simple Jean Michel Jarre bass line with just a few modifications in the sound edit menu. So that's the way to do it, and hope this helps, and see you in the next tutorial.